This, of course, is the Origin Weekly Community Call. I'm Micah, Director of Product, joining today from sunny South Florida for the first time. OUSD APY here is a balmy, 26.5%. Hopefully continues to climb, but things are going well. I'm excited about what Tom and Daniel have been working on, and same for Doman. So we'll get into some of that today. The agenda should be pretty familiar at this point. We'll check in and see if there are any announcements. We will hopefully get a liquidity mining update from Josh, and then we will go through our sprint check-in to see what's the priority for the 2-week period ending later this week, and then what's next for the following week. I think there are some governance proposals that we should check in on. And then, as always, we have a couple of discussion topics, including upcoming audits, and then the multi-chain exploration that Tom's been working on. And as always, if anyone wants to introduce themselves, if this is the first time you're joining us, or just want to let us know what you're up to, then we'd love for you to do that. And if you're watching later on YouTube or anywhere else, you should join us in the Origin Protocol Discord. And of course, that is at originprotocol.com/Discord. Are there any announcements or anything to start with before we move on in the agenda? No announcements today. Well, I think we'll have plenty to talk about a little bit later in some of the engineering discussion, but feel free to interrupt me if you think of something that everyone should be aware of. Josh, I think you're here now. We were just about to get to liquidity mining update. If you wanted to give one today.
Yeah, so it's an off week since we did the vote bribing last week. So we're just carrying over from that. A lot of questions about what we're going to be doing with liquidity mining going forward. So we're going to take a bit of a pause and see how much we're able to get organically. A lot of our competitors took a big hit in the last week. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the bribing marketplaces if if things reset a little bit. It may be a good opportunity for us to come back in at more reasonable prices. But we're continuing to buy and vote lock Convex, and so we'll still be voting for our own pool. So rewards will continue, just not quite at the same level that they have for the last 10 weeks or so. Any questions on this? All right, back to you, Micah.
Okay, thanks for keeping an eye on that. The next topic is sprint check-in. So we have a sprint wrapping up on Wednesday. The two projects that are big priorities were the harvest upgrades, which we've talked about many times. I think Doman said that he is pretty much done there. He needs to write a brownie script to verify the deploy, and then it's full speed ahead from there. Does that sound right, Daniel, or is there anything else you know of that needs to be done on that side?
Yeah, I reviewed through the test and the deployment script this morning, and that looks good. I'll be thoroughly reviewing the test and seeing if there's anything that's missing from them, but it's very well tested, and it's getting very close to going. So what he's doing is just making stuff that will take a simulation of it and of it being deployed, and then go through and do a lot of stuff to verify that it works. But it's getting very close.
Nice. And this was Doman's first big Solidity project, right?
Yep. And I've stared at it hard, but you'd never guess that it was his first Solidity code.
Very cool. Well, that's exciting, I think, for all of us. I'm certainly, as a user of OUSD, I'm certainly looking forward to these upgrades happening. And so by this time next week, we will have the decentralized harvest incentives in place. Is that right? Or does that come slightly later?
We'll still have to go through the time lock and stuff. And so as long as everything's good, I think we can put it into the time lock next Monday.
Okay. Does that include like the automatic harvesting of
Yes, it's our
CVX?
automatic harvesting and sale of convex tokens, as well as automatic harvesting and sale of everything else continuing.
Cool. So we're more like 2 weeks from that actually
Yes.
hitting real users. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for helping to push that along. The other big project is on-chain governance, which Tom has been owning. And it looks like you got some notes here in the meeting doc. Tom, do you want to talk through those and let us know where you stand on the project?
Yeah, I spun up a repo for this stuff and I've dropped it in the doc there. It's very, very early on. It's basically just me prototyping stuff publicly. So only look at it if you're very enthusiastic about this stuff. There's no documentation yet or anything like that. The big thing that I've got in the notes here is we need to decide on a decay function for voting power across the term of the lockup. Basically, there's two options for this. What Curve and a few other people do is a linear decay in voting power. So at the start of your lockup, your voting power will be the highest it can be, and it will decay towards the end of the lockup. So just before your tokens are about to unlock, your voting power will be at its lowest. Almost, in the case of Curve, it will be basically zero just prior to your tokens being unlocked. And the other option we have is what Convex do, which is sort of just a cliff where you have full vote power until the end of your token lockup expires. The cliff option is what I've gone with in my prototypes, but I wanted to raise it for discussion because it's kind of an important decision. The cliff option does have this sort of nasty property of people have full voting power at the very end of their lockup. So if you take an example of someone locking up for say 4 years and they get a large boost to their voting power, they'll have that full power sort of the week before their tokens unlock, which means possibly they can vote in a way that is not aligned with sort of the long-term interests of the protocol because they're about to unlock. Whereas a linear decay, at that point in time, they'll have very little voting power left. So the linear decay sort of does align better for long-term goals of the protocol. The problem with linear decay is it's very complicated and it makes a lot of things difficult, especially around, the implementation. I guess Curve have done a pretty good job, and there's a fork by mstable and Solidity, which is also pretty well done, but it's not simple code, and it's not exact in all cases, and it's sometimes quite hard to reason about. Like the balances change. It uses a checkpointing system to write checkpoints, but the balances at any given time are not fixed. They change whenever you query them, which is, kind of a nasty property for things like voting. So yeah, I just wanted to bring it up and discuss, see what other people think about it. If it's up to me, I'm just going to go forward with the cliff voting power system like Convex uses. So I wanted to see if anyone has any strong feelings about it.
Has anyone else done the cliff with a very long lockup? Obviously, the lockup between Convex and or max lockup between Convex and Curve is quite different, whether it's 16 weeks or 4 years. Have you seen anything like that?
No, I haven't. Yeah, as you know, the cliff stuff works better for shorter periods. I think it makes more sense then. But no, I haven't I've sort of surveyed as many as I could look at. Most of them are just straight curve forks or with a few tweaks. Like Frax has tweaked a couple of things, but yeah, I haven't seen that sort of cliff with a long lockup period.
And were they forking the Viper contracts or the MStable fork in Solidity?
Frax, I think, is a Viper contract. Yeah, man. Most people just use the curve contracts without really any modifications. The MStable thing expands on it's a Solidity fork, but it also expands the functionality a bit to add like streaming reward tokens or reward tokens that are claimable after certain periods. But I think the MStable stuff is interesting, but I don't know how widely used it is. I haven't seen it used outside of MStable, so would want to get it audited. Whereas you'd probably get away with using the curve stuff unaudited because it's so widely used now.
I wonder is there like an alternative in between where we would have like multiple cliffs, like it gradually decreases over time, but plateaus, like a step function basically.
Or yeah, if you could have a cliff that happens some designated amount of time before the end, then you still got like a couple of weeks that you can't trash the token after. You have no voting power, but the protocol still has a couple of weeks before. So time enough for whatever you've done to have an effect. Would that make things simpler? If like it was even say a 2-week back off where you had no power.
You mean like 2 weeks before the end, the voting power reduces to sort of nothing?
It just goes from 100% to 0. Yeah, 2 weeks before the end. Should also sort of incentivize longer lockups.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to think about the sort of the minimum lockup period as well in those cases. I mean, it would work for longer lockups, but I think the way I've written it, it supports sort of a week-long lockup if you want to just lock up for a little bit and throw your vote out there. But I mean, I guess there's probably alternate arrangements like that we could cook up.
I don't know if that'd actually be simpler on your code, but that would at least give you numbers that aren't changing all the time. Still changes once though.
Yeah. That would. I mean, that's sort of much simpler than the linear decay stuff would be.
Linear decay feels like it'd be a real pain to lock your stuff up for 4 years and basically have no voting for the last year of it or something.
Yeah, it decreases. Like, I found it weird that the curve stuff decreases to 0, which is like you basically got no power at the end there. You just
and some of the forks have changed that, so it decreases to a quarter of your voting power at the end instead of 0, which maybe is less secure, but feels a little bit more fair versus having all your tokens locked up and not having any voting power at all.
Yeah. Yeah, so the way the prototype currently works is it uses the cliff stuff. But I mean, we can think about this further. I've got other stuff to go on with. It's a tough decision.
Should we follow up on it in GitHub? Try to settle it there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. There was, I think, one other piece to that you wanted to talk through, maybe?
Yeah, I was just wanted to point out that all of these governance contracts all use this checkpointing system that requires a sort of a function to be called to checkpoint the whole setup. I guess we have to figure out a way to call that or incentivize people to call that. It's just
how expensive is it and how often does it need to be called?
I think it varies how often it needs to be called depending on how we do this, and yeah, I haven't looked into how expensive it could possibly be.
But is
No,
this
it's
like
probably-
update everybody who has a lockup kind of thing, or is it much smaller than that?
So the curve one works by, it has a bias and a slope for all the linear decays, and it uses like a global bias and slope for the total supply. So it's sort of like two rights, I think, in terms of, and a whole bunch of
Yeah, ouch.
Yeah, I curve like the maths.
And so that's only if we go with linear decay. If we do a cliff, we don't need to do checkpoints, right?
Yeah, it kind of depends on what features we need to get out of it. The checkpoints are quite nice because you have I think for a voting system, you need to be able to refer to voting power in the past at a certain block, like the total supply and how much voting power someone had. That seems like it's a property that you need to have for it. But like these contracts all have that ability, right? You can look at a previous vote and say this person had this much power and this was the total supply. I don't see any reason why. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Maybe we don't need it. Maybe it's not a hard requirement, but I haven't thought too much about that.
Is that in the current code in the repo, or is that not there yet?
Yes, it's in the current code.
Okay.
So you can pass a block number to like the total supply function to get what it was at that time. And that requires sort of a checkpointing system.
Does it have to be recorded on chain, or can it be done? Could it be done by on the side by querying the blockchain at a given block number?
So this is done on chain. The current implementation, but whether you have to do it that way, good question.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go to full on-chain governance, being able to check voting power at a certain block seems important.
But a dApp could do that, right? A dApp could query against the blockchain at a given block number, right?
We have to be able to know whether the vote passed or not, which is a function of how much votes people had. But yeah, I'm not following why you need to know the past, though, because in order for a vote to go through, you need to look at the present, I guess. Or I guess where people are locked in.
Well, a lot of times you do. You issue a vote and then you say at this block because you don't. You want to do a block before the proposal gets issued, so that people don't go out and buy a bunch of your token to try and skew it. Now you don't want to go, months and months and months in the past, but you do want to do a little bit of a look back.
Yeah. Maybe you could trigger a snapshot manually at that point that a new proposal is going to be coming down the line, and then you only have to trigger it just before a proposal was, blocked before you put a proposal on chain.
Yeah, that's an option. I guess you could. I mean, you could also record it with the proposal somehow too, right? Like write the amount of votes that are required to pass, and of course here we're sort of veering off course with the if we want to stick as close as we we can to existing prior art, we're kind of, I'm hesitant to do these kind of things. Anyway, that's about it for me. Have a look at the repository if you want to see things.
I'll enjoy looking through that.
Cool, thanks, Tom. Sounds like you made a lot of progress on that. We have a new sprint starting this Thursday, and we talked a little bit last week about what the priorities might be for that sprint. I think this on-chain governance stuff is going to spill over but Doman's going to be done with his project by then. So I think he was planning to work on IPFS DApp deployment and deployment automation. I think that he was interested in that. Otherwise, Tom, I think you're starting to explore layer 2 and multi-chain options. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But if there's anything that that Doman could do to help there, he might have some bandwidth. And then I think, Daniel, you mentioned in stand-up that you were wanting to dig into the Dripper, the contract that would stream rewards from harvests. Is that a top priority for now?
I think I'm going to spend the day in design on it, and I may do like a live video or do it live some, and just see kind of where we end up, and then we can evaluate from there whether we want to do it, and I'll know more about it. So yeah, probably do that Wednesday.
Cool. That'd be amazing if you could give everybody some notice, let us tune in. That would be a lot of fun.
Yep.
All right. Anything else that comes to mind that should be a sprint priority starting this week? Anyone? We, of course, have our new GitHub project board. So there's, I think, a view on there. It's like a third tab of a lot of issues that I've surfaced from the repository that you might look at for a reminder of something that you filed in the past that we might want to circle back on. But otherwise, we can firm up sprint priorities on Wednesday.
Hey, Micah, how about strategist tools? I thought we discussed.
Oh yes, I should. Sorry. So last week I built tools to make my life easier, so that it'll take up a lot less, free up a lot of my time to do other things. But I did not get to making publicly available strategist tools.
Do you want to write up like a short summary of what those might be, so we could track them and prioritize them?
Yeah, you want me to put up a GitHub issue with that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if it's just
Okay.
one or a couple, so that we keep track of them.
I've noticed that the spreadsheet that's been posted has been getting better and better. It seems like it anyway. It was really useful last week.
Oh, Josh's sheet?
Yep.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Yeah, if you're referring to like the voters' perspective,
Yes, voters'
what
perspective.
strategy should do. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I might have some thoughts on that too, but I've been a very active voter. but I'm sure you've got several things in mind. So if you don't mind kicking that off, I'll follow up on it.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks. Any other things come to mind, Franck, or anyone else?
Not on my side.
Okay. Speaking of voting, there are, I think, 2 open governance proposals in Snapshot. That's at vote.originprotocol.com. One of them is our weekly strategy allocation, which is what Daniel is referring to, could benefit from some more tooling. And then the other one is a proposal Doman wrote up to formalize the decision to decentralize our harvest triggering. So this is confirming our decision to provide a 1% incentive for anyone who calls the new harvest function that will, I guess, is it going to harvest from all the strategies or one at a time, Daniel? I think it is going to be one at a time.
Correct. It'll pull from each one basically when it gets full enough to make it worthwhile paying 1% of the yield from it to harvest gas. But that essentially gives us a very fixed cost on how much we're paying for it. And yeah, it'll be decently smooth in situations like we are right now where most of the yield is in one strategy. If it's kind of evenly over many strategies and they kind of get into the same beat with each other, then it could be lumpy-ish yield. But regardless, it will be no worse than we are right now.
Yeah. Okay. I suspect that that one shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but we do want to put it through the snapshot voting. So please remember to vote on that one if you have not already. And the strategy allocation vote opens a few hours from now, and it's open for 2 days. Josh, I think you started scheduling an audit for a few months from now. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, just so we're aware, we've scheduled 4 auditor weeks with Open Zeppelin for May 16th. That's how far out you have to get on our calendar, but we locked in that time. So we're not sure exactly what we're going to have them audit yet, but just so we're aware of it, we can throw some of our big questionable code at them at that time.
Did you say 4 weeks?
It's going to be 2 auditors for 2 weeks each, so 4 auditor weeks.
4 audit weeks. Okay, cool.
Sounds good.
Looks like Tommy's. Oh, sorry, Micah.
No,
I just had a question for our team. It feels like Tom is making like super strong progress on the governance contracts. So I wonder if we should look at another auditing team to audit these governance contracts sooner than May, since we're probably going to be releasing them sooner, right?
I think we should. Depending contingent a little bit on how much we change. Out of the people we've worked with, do we have any preference on who we want to reach out to? I'm pretty sure Trailer Bits I know Trailer Bits are backed up just as much as Open Zeppelin. We could hit up Solidified or Satora again, or reach out to someone new.
I don't think this kind of contract would really be Satora's strength. It's, I guess, fairly well. I guess the vote locking side might be could be fairly up their alley.
I'd be leaning more towards Solidified, but I don't know, Tom, do you have any opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really a matter of who's available. It's you don't have much to choose from, right? I guess I will note that a lot of the governance stuff is Open Zeppelin's reference contracts, so a lot of it probably doesn't need to be audited, assuming those don't have bugs in them. But whoever we can get, I'd say.
Yeah, I'll ping Solidified and see if we can get just a little bit of time, just to make sure we're stapling things together in the right way.
Daniel, did you want to talk about a faster pause?
Yeah, so I'm just throwing this out here for discussion and thinking. I've been seeing that over the last couple of months, people have gotten way better at live detecting malicious contracts or malicious attacks, basically, in almost real time. And so there's kind of a shadowy group of white hats who watch things happening live, and usually within like a minute of something going live, or already disassembling it and figuring out what it is. And so the odds of catching something before it actually executes has gone up considerably over the last couple months. People are also, Forta is trying to build some tools around this, although there's tools look more like things that would catch things after a problem. But regardless, a second effect of having this kind of live view into malicious activity is seeing that there really are more failures at it than I would initially suspect. You would think people would have everything simulated out to the nth degree and execute this precision operation, and the reality is 50% of people fail in their first shot, and sometimes you see this one guy working over and over and over and over again for like days trying to hack this one contract. So with live deploys going on, so there's definitely an element of non-professionalism out there among black hats. So thinking about this, currently we have a 2 of 8 multi-sig that gives us the ability to pause in about 15 minutes. This is about what we've had in the past. But I was thinking we could actually switch to one person who's on the whitelist to pause, being able to pause instantly with just one signature, and then allowing the strategist multi-sig to unpause then if it was a false alarm. And then further, I was thinking we could actually give out some of those pauses to external people who are live watching, basically. And, if they find something and catch it, they get a bug bounty. But that way, that just increases the odds that we'd catch it. The disadvantage is there's increased odds of pausing unnecessarily, but if we have the ability to unpause it in 15 minutes after an all clear, I don't think that would drastically affect much. Just looking for initial gut reactions to that.
And the pausing would only impact mints and redeems, is that correct?
Mints, redeems, and rebases.
And rebases.
Did you say how long the pause would be in effect until we unpause?
Be in effect until unpaused, yeah. And so we'd want some alerting to happen, whenever a pause happened, we'd want to get like text messages or something.
Yeah, the user experience impact feels relatively low, especially with our current rate of minting and redeeming and rebasing. Yeah, it's just a matter of prioritization of how badly we feel like we need this. I think it's a good thing for us to have. It's just a matter of how urgently we need to implement this versus everything else that's on our plate.
Okay, well, I'll just keep it kind of in mind then. It's likely just changing who can pause to a single, or to add an external contract or address that can pause, and then that external address basically works like a multi-sig, except it's probably just a contract that you add users to or add addresses to and remove them from, and it just sends the pause on through.
It's just a one of 20 multi-sig or something like that, right?
Basically, we can add and remove people to it, and when somebody's added to it, they can hit pause on it, and it sends it through the vault, and the vault listens to that.
I think, I like the idea. I think I considered it before with like a programmatic equivalent of that. A thing could call pause. I guess it would be cool if we could have the DApp would display this thing is paused or this thing is
yes,
unengaged.
we should put that in DApp support, yeah. Although technically it really only needs, it should show it, but it really only needs to remove the vault options. You can still swap it while it's paused.
Right.
Yeah, just take the mint and redeem through the vault out, or that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's pretty good to have a big red pause button, accessible to a few trusted people in case we have an emergency. Obviously, yeah, we need to think through the security implication, right? If one of these wallet gets compromised, but as you guys said, pausing
we put a counter on it, so it gives you one pause, and then you hit that pause, and you don't get no more pauses until we, decide if you used it well.
Yeah, your pausing power is it's a cliff. If you raise a false alarm.
Yeah. Well, I like the automated one. It seems like that's going to be far more foolproof than humans, but will also give us a lot more false alarms. And I don't have a good sense of how many false alarms that would be triggering at this point in time.
Yeah. Well, essentially, the contract support that would be in this humans in the loop is what would be used for any kind of future automated system, because the automated system would get an account, or would have an ETH address that it sends to, and that's one of the ones on the list, basically. So this gives us both. Essentially, we're building the foundation for anything later.
Makes sense.
All right, back to you, Micah.
Thanks. It sounds really cool. We should definitely make sure we prioritize it. Just figure out where it slots in. Last topic in the discussion part of the agenda is layer 2 alternate chain exploration. First, I wanted to mention that our friend Paul, who's joining us, I think, for the second time on the call, started working on some research for what all considerations there might be for each layer 2 or alternate chain option. So I've linked his spreadsheet here in the notes. Take a look at that if you have not yet, and I'm sure he'd appreciate any comments from you, Tom, or Josh, or anyone else who has opinions on how we go about making this decision, not just about which way we go. And then when it comes to which way we go, Tom started working on a poll for us to survey really everyone in the community about which chain they think we should do first, and it would be great to hear why that's the case also. So, Tom, is there anything that you wanted to add about the poll, and when do you plan on circulating that?
No, just interested in what the community thinks. I've got a document with some of the technical options and sort of a brief look at the different chains. Paul's done a much better job at looking at the different chains than I have, but I'll include the poll results in that document when I circulate it, which should be today or tomorrow.
Good deal. Paul, I didn't want to gloss over the work that you had started. Was there anything that you wanted to add or any questions that you had for us?
Yeah, I had a couple, mainly around like the goals of OSUSD, like long term, because that kind of like also affects the decisions on which chains. So if it's like, yeah, OUSD wants to go for the biggest TVL, which is probably temporary as the herd goes from L1 to L1, or is it like number of wallets, that basically number of users that can interact with this. And so I didn't quite have an answer. Like if I think I know what I would choose, but I also was wondering if all of you have thought about this, because you obviously want the TVL to be big enough to have liquidity and for people to use it, but you also want the actual end users to use it. So I was just wondering if you all have like thought about that. And the second part was around decentralization, and if you want to make sure that a chain that OUSD goes onto is decentralized or not. So just two questions around that to kind of try to figure out which chain might be better.
Very good questions. I can take a stab at it from my perspective. So as far as which one's more important, TVL or number of users, I think it's a matter of sequencing. I mean, for us, we've prioritized TVL first and foremost. But once you start getting to an adequate TVL, you start to shift your focus to how do we actually increase the number of users. But TVL is sort of first thing that gets you in the door when it's when you're talking to partners, trying to get integrations done. It gives you that level of integration, like confidence in the protocol. Makes people trust it's secure, and just it makes it a lot easier for people to work with you. Long term, we want to make OUSD ubiquitous, and we want to have as many people using it as possible. So I guess at this point, we're still largely focused on TVL, but increasingly we care about the number of wallets as well. So we want both, but I think right now we're probably still a little bit more focused on TVL. Long term, we probably care more about number of wallets. As far as decentralization, I think obviously that's really important to us. One thing we'll really want to understand is what are the consequences to the broader protocol if we are running on a more centralized chain. So if we used Binance Smart Chain, like what are the implications of that for the people who are holding USD on Ethereum, for example, and does it have are the consequences of that limited to the people who are on Binance Chain, or is it one big pool where everyone is impacted by that, and we compromise all of OUSD. So that would be something I would want to understand as well. Anyone else want to take a stab at it or share your perspective?
Sure. To me, it seems like we're constantly running into people who want to put smaller amounts into OUSD and can't because of gas fees and stuff. And so even though I think big picture OUSD going for TVL is where we're at right now, I think in bringing a chunk of people on who want to use OUSD, I think hitting the smaller wallets is, kind of a core goal of this is to bring OUSD to people who can't use it currently. We have a working OUSD over here, and then we have a large population of people who can only live over here because of the size of the amounts they're using. I don't know how much difference that really makes in picking which chain, because it feels like TVLs and users would, or how many we get would be similar. But to me, it seems like we've got a hole currently and on the low gas fees users, and so that we can pick them up with this. And as we're long term, as Josh was saying, the goal is to have OUSD be ubiquitous, and the more people we have using it, goes right along with that.
Yeah, I definitely. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say one thing that I would add, not necessarily answering either of those questions, but related to what Daniel was saying, is we probably want to consider what the on-ramp is like for users who are coming in these other chains. Because, to Daniel's point, we want OUSD to be more accessible because costs are lower. But if it's less accessible because the on-ramp is that much more complicated, then it might sort of defeat the purpose a little bit. And I think that there are some chains or layer 2 options that might have the potential to grow much bigger than they are right now. And so I think that's where the on-ramp comes into the picture, and we wouldn't want to only focus on what the current usage is.
So that brings up another point. Have you all thought about making your own on-ramp from fiat to OUSD as a complete picture of hey, I just want to get my paycheck and directly deposit it into OUSD, long term, I don't know what long term is in crypto, but it seems like
Yeah, we have. We started on this path, talking to Circle, looking at what it would take. I think currently we're focused on how we can do this outside the US to start, as the regulatory environment for stablecoins has gotten a lot more dicey just in the last few months. But our thought here around this is how can we provide those on-ramps in other countries, and then as we're able to get more comfortable with it, then bringing it to the US, starting with the more friendly states, and then building from there. So that is something we're working on. It's just slow from a legal and regulatory perspective.
Cool.
I've been doing some research in this area, and I think it's important to look at as an intermediate step between building our own on-ramp. We should look at what centralized exchanges support. A lot of them are supporting Ethereum layer 2s right now, but maybe there's more support overall for an Avalanche or something like that, or a Solana. So I think that's an important bridge between when we get all this ramp infrastructure set up, because that takes quite a long time. There's a lot of legal, we have to set up bank accounts and get licenses and stuff like that. So it might take a year or more to set that up. So doing an inventory of what the large centralized exchanges in each target market support right now, or plan on supporting in the near future, I think is as important, or maybe more important, than looking at the on-chain data or whatever. And overall, philosophically, I think I agree with most of the people. Supporting smaller users is long-term going to unlock more TVL for us than just supporting DeFi whales right now. And I'm more bullish on OUSD as a high yield saving instrument than a stablecoin currency for trading right now. So we've seen a lot of issues with synthetic stables or stables that are wrapped versions of other stables, and there's a lot of calamity and stuff happening right now with that. So I think if we were to become like a dominant trading pair, we might have to adjust our structure quite a bit. So I think the high yield savings use case is probably better for us right now. And if we're going in the direction, we should favor low transaction fees.
Great points, Coleman. Have you seen any data around which exchanges support which chains or layer twos? Like, do you have that, or have you seen that aggregated somewhere?
I haven't seen it aggregated somewhere, but given that there's only a handful of like truly relevant exchanges, it's not hard to find that information. I know people on Twitter are like, oh, Arbitrum or whatever is now supported by this exchange. Like, people like to talk about that kind of stuff. So I'm sure we can find out, like Binance. I doubt Coinbase is supporting it, but Binance and like KuCoin, the one or two other highly relevant exchanges, we can figure that out fairly quickly.
Yeah, sounds like something that's worth doing.
Great. Thanks everybody for the input on that. Coleman, I don't know if you want to connect with Paul. I don't know if you guys have crossed paths yet, but you might want to coordinate on that research so it's not redundant. Let's see. I'm glad we got into that a little bit, but it'll be great to see Tom's doc when he shares it, and any continued findings from Paul. Frank or anyone else? I think we had hiring as a topic on the agenda. Not sure who added.
I did add it. Just as a reminder, we have open positions in our engineering team and PM team. So if anyone is interested, please reach out to us. The best way to reach us is probably on Discord. You can tag me or Micah, and then we'll follow up with you. On the engineering side, we are looking for DeFi engineers, Solidity experience, also looking for strong web developers. So yeah, please reach out if you are interested, or if you know anyone who might be interested.
And you can see those job postings at angel.co/origin protocol. But yeah, you're welcome to reach out to us on Discord as well. All right. Were there anyone else who wanted to introduce themselves or have anything to add to any of these topics, or have any questions about OUSD or anything else? Feel free to jump in anytime. If not, then I think we captured 2 action items, and I just lost my place in the doc. Here we go. Josh, you're going to reach out to Solidified. Daniel, you're going to kick off the GitHub issue for the allocation voting tools. And Tom, we had an old one for you to look into delegation for on-chain governance. It seems like that is probably covered in what you're doing, yeah?
Yeah. Delegation is actually quite nasty, depending on sort of the decay function you use. It's a topic for another day, probably.
Okay, well, keep it in mind. Josh?
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe another action item for us as we try and make this decision around the decay stuff. Like, let's ping some of the people who've spent a lot of time thinking about this. We've talked to Convex founders about this, but it'd be worth reaching out to other projects that have forked the VE token model and get their thought process, and engaging other people who've thought deeply about this is probably worthwhile. So I will ping people in my network, but it might be worthwhile for others to do the same as well.
Yep, I've got at least one that I'll reach out to. So I'll follow up with you and let you know how that goes.
Great.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Anything we missed in the meeting? Okay, well then, thanks for being here. We'll see you in Discord.
See y'all.
all.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.